Ever feel like just keeping up with the world requires, like, a brain upgrade? You're not alone.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Today's deep dive is all about harnessing that built-in brain power we've got, diving into elastic, flexible thinking in a time of change.
By Leonard Muller now.
That's the one. It's all about change, how our brains are wired for it.
We hear a lot about information overload these days, but the funny thing is our brains are built for it. Like we've got this hidden advantage, this elastic thinking.
Okay, so elastic thinking, break that down for me. How's it different from how we usually process all this information flying at us?
So picture this. Our brains have three main modes. First, there's scripts, those automatic responses, pure instinct.
Like,
Imagine a goose rolling a non-existent egg back to its nest. No deep thought there, just instinct.
okay, I get it. What's next?
Then there's analytical thinking, a
Yeah.
logical side, right? Like when you're figuring out the best way home or balancing your checkbook.
So those are the basics, the robot part of our brain. But elastic thinking, this is where things get really interesting, yeah.
Exactly. It's our ability to make connections, to jump between ideas, come up with something new, when the simple answer just won't cut it. That's what makes us so adaptable.
Even in our AI-obsessed world, that ability still gives us an edge.
Absolutely. Muller now uses this great example of a chess computer versus, a human grandmaster.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
The computer can calculate a ridiculous number of moves per second, but the grandmaster can still keep up, sometimes even win.
Okay, that's reassuring, because those AI headlines, they can be a bit much sometimes.
Right. But even with all that power, computers struggle with the fluid, adaptable thinking we do naturally.
So what is it about us? What gives us that edge over even the most advanced computer?
Think about it. You can easily read a text message full of typos.
Oh, tell me about it.
But a computer, that's a wall for them.
Huh. So we've got this superpower, but why is elastic thinking so rewarding? Is it just that aha moment, or is there something deeper going on?
It's more than just feeling good. Remember how the book talks about our brain's reward system?
Yeah, like a built-in reward system.
Exactly. It's like there's this motivator showering your brain with dopamine when we figure out a tough problem or grasp a new concept. It feels good, so we're driven to do it more.
It's like that patient, the one who aced those logic tests but couldn't decide what to eat. Damaged reward system, right?
The case of EVR, and it highlights how essential our emotional responses are to even the simplest problem solving. Without those good signals, our motivation just tanks.
Fascinating. So we're wired for this, but here's a thought. Is a little chaos actually good for our brains?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this.
Could those ADHD tendencies actually be an advantage in today's world, where everything's changing so fast?
There's definitely evidence for that. One study, they looked at nomadic tribes in Kenya.
Okay.
The individuals with those ADHD-related genes were actually more successful in those unpredictable environments. Like their brains were already primed for change.
That changes things. It's like what we used to see as distractible. Now it's the key to thriving. But how do we tap into that more effectively? It's not like we're all dodging grizzly bears or inventing gadgets on a daily basis.
Right. It's about those everyday ways to build that adaptability. And a big part of that is understanding how our brains create thoughts in the first place.
Okay, now you're going to make me question everything I thought I knew.
Let's just say we're on autopilot more than we realize.
Okay.
Imagine this. A researcher approaches people waiting for, say, a copy machine, asks to cut in line.
Classic. Always makes you wonder how people will react.
The researcher, they offered no justification. Only about 60% of people agreed.
Really? I'd like to think I'd say no.
But here's the thing, when they gave any reason, even if it made no sense,
Like what?
because I need to make copies, suddenly 94% said yes.
Wow. So it wasn't about the request, it was just the social script.
Exactly. This scripted behavior, it happens all the time. Our brains conserve energy with those pre-programmed responses. It's efficient, but not always helpful when we need to adapt.
So how do we break free from those scripts? How do we flex those elastic thinking muscles? What can we actually do?
Mindfulness, it can be a
Yeah.
powerful tool.
Mindfulness.
Right? Being present, aware of our thoughts and feelings, without judgment. And it's not just some buzzwords. Studies show it can actually change the brain.
Rewiring things, just from paying attention to my breath or doing a quick meditation app.
It's pretty wild. By practicing mindfulness, we strengthen that ability to observe those automatic responses.
So we don't get swept away by them.
Exactly. Hit the pause button, let that elastic thinking kick in.
Okay, so less reacting, more choosing. But how do we go from mindful to actually, coming up with fresh ideas?
Yeah.
Making those creative leaps?
That's where mental representations come in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Mental representations.
Every thought, every concept, it exists as this pattern of activity in our brains.
Our own little internal world.
It's how we make sense of everything.
Okay, but how's that different from, say, how a computer processes information?
Big difference. Think about Deep Blue.
Deep Blue, the chess computer, beat Kasparov.
Exactly. Back in the 90s, Deep Blue, it was all brute force calculations, millions of moves.
And Kasparov.
Kasparov's brain was seeing patterns, possibilities.
So Deep Blue's stuck in the weeds while Kasparov's seeing the whole board. That's wild.
Exactly. It shows how even the most advanced AI struggles to replicate that fluid way we think. And we don't just follow the rules. We adapt, we improvise, we find workarounds.
Okay, that's reassuring. But if we're so good at this, why do we hit those creative walls? Why isn't elastic thinking just our default?
Think of your brain like a garden.
A garden, okay.
If you keep planting the same things in the same spot, the soil, it gets depleted.
Right, it needs variety.
Our brains crave novelty, just like a garden needs different nutrients.
Okay, I like that. So how do we fertilize those mental gardens?
Elastic has some good advice. Exposing ourselves to new experiences, new perspectives.
Doesn't have to be some big life change, right?
Exactly. Try a new food, listen to a different kind of music, have a conversation with someone you don't agree with.
Expand our horizons. What about when we need those new ideas? Any tips for jump-starting the creative process?
The book talks about divergent thinking. Coming up with as many ideas as possible. No judgment.
Oh yeah, those how many uses for a paperclip exercises?
That's it. Quantity over quality, at least at first.
Sometimes the wackier the better.
Exactly. Sometimes those wacky ideas, that's where the innovation comes from.
True. This has been helpful, but what about those of us who aren't natural brainstormers? Are there lower pressure ways to build that elastic thinking?
Definitely. Something as simple as regular exercise can have a huge impact.
Wait, going for a run can make me a more elastic thinker.
There's a growing body of research that says yes. Exercise, it increases blood flow to the brain, helps grow new brain cells, strengthens connections.
So it's not just endorphins, it's like a workout for our brains. I like it. But let's zoom out for a second. Why does all this matter so much? Why is this the skill to be developing right now?
Because the world's changing faster than ever.
Yeah.
Climate change, technology, everything's in flux. We can't rely on those old ways of thinking.
We need to adapt and fast.
Exactly. And to do that well, we need to be able to see past the obvious, challenge those assumptions, make connections others miss. That's elastic thinking.
So it's not just a nice to have, it's essential. Are there any downsides, though, to being a highly elastic thinker?
Well, there's always that risk of getting so caught up in the new ideas that you lose sight of, the reality. It's a balance, creativity and action.
So being able to generate those ideas, but then also say, okay, is this actually doable?
Right. Another potential pitfall is analysis paralysis, overthinking all the options.
Oh, I know that one. Too many tabs open in the brain.
Exactly. The book suggests aiming for satisficing. Making a choice that's good enough instead of shooting for perfection every single time.
Love that. Giving ourselves permission to just decide and move forward.
And it's not about settling, it's about recognizing that sometimes good enough is actually best, especially when you don't have unlimited time and resources.
Progress over perfection. It sounds like this is more than just, a thinking skill. It's an attitude, a way of approaching everything.
Absolutely. It's about curiosity, openness, embracing the unknown. Change isn't a threat, it's an opportunity.
So getting comfortable being a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. Because when we step outside that comfort zone, that's when those breakthroughs happen.
This is really resonating. It's like a new operating system for our brains.
Love that.
One that's actually designed for this world we live in now.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our brains are already wired for change and embracing that.
And that's where that reward system kicks in again.
It's not just about that aha moment. It's about craving that whole process of discovery.
Give me an example. How does that play out in real life?
Think about a time you were really stuck on something.
Yes, I can picture it now.
Then suddenly, something clicked.
That mental logjam breaks?
Dopamine. It reinforces that pleasure, encouraging you to keep chasing those breakthroughs.
So we're wired to find joy in problem solving? Makes sense, but how do we tap into that more regularly? Life's not always full of huge aha moments.
True, but you can find those little opportunities for elastic thinking everywhere. Build in a few minutes each day for a brain teaser or a creative exercise, even just changing your route to work.
Shake things up.
Break out of those mental ruts, challenge your brain.
And that's where the fun starts, right? It's not just about being more productive, it's about bringing that playfulness back, that curiosity.
Exactly, and that playfulness, it can really change things. Approach challenges with excitement, not fear.
I love it.
Yeah.
This makes me think about challenges in a whole new way. Not obstacles, but opportunities. But let's be real, not everyone loves uncertainty. How do we move past that fear of change?
You're right, for some, change can be really tough. And the book talks about how that's often because of our past experiences. If change was always seen as bad or scary growing up.
You learn to associate it with danger.
Exactly. But our brains are adaptable. We can rewire those pathways, learn to see change as a positive.
Okay, how do we do that? Give us the steps.
It starts with perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of threat, think opportunity.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It is. Start small. Instead of some massive life change, just make tiny tweaks to your routine.
Try a new restaurant, clean out that junk drawer.
Exactly. Nudge yourself outside that comfort zone bit by bit. Build up your tolerance.
Brain training. I like it. So we're not just thinking differently, we're rewiring those neural pathways. Powerful stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as we become better at navigating change, not only will we be more equipped to thrive, but we'll also experience the joy that comes from pushing ourselves.
Unlocking that potential. This is exciting. But let's get specific. Real world examples. Who's embodying this elastic thinking out there?
One cool example is biomimicry. Scientists and engineers looking to nature for inspiration.
Okay, biomimicry. Need a visual.
Velcro.
Velcro.
It was inspired by those little hooks on burrs, the ones that stick to clothes.
Oh.
Someone saw that and thought, new kind of fastener.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. Seeing the potential in something so ordinary.
Biomimicry is like that. Recognizing that nature has already solved so many of the problems we're dealing with.
It's like this whole library of innovation just waiting. Other example.
The bullet train, they designed it based on a kingfisher's beak, so it enters tunnels with less noise. And scientists are even working on self-healing materials based on how living things repair themselves.
Hold on, self-healing materials. My car could fix its own scratches.
Not magic, it's science. Could be huge for everything from airplanes to, well, anything really.
This is amazing. Like we're finally catching up to what nature already knows.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what else is possible when we start thinking this way.
Absolutely. And biomimicry is just one example. Entrepreneurship is another. Think about those big innovators, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk.
Okay, yeah.
They all have this knack for seeing opportunity where others see roadblocks.
Makes sense. Entrepreneurs, they're constantly having to pivot, adapt, come up with new solutions.
Exactly. It's not just the idea, it's having the elastic thinking to deal with all those inevitable setbacks.
Resourcefulness, adaptability, a bit of fearlessness too, probably. So not just for business then. This mindset, it can be applied to, well, anything really.
Absolutely. Unlocking our potential no matter what we're doing. Whether it's starting that company, pursuing some creative passion, or just navigating everyday life.
This has been amazing. But before we wrap up, Ganesh, you mentioned the brain's hierarchical structure earlier. How's that connected to all this?
Good memory. Our brains, they're organized in this hierarchy, different areas with different specialties.
Like departments in a company.
Exactly. And elastic thinking, it's about all those areas working together. The prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, it's a team effort.
So is there a captain of the elastic thinking team?
You could say that. The default mode network is a big one.
Default mode network. Okay, that sounds important.
It's a network of brain regions that activate when our minds are just wandering, daydreaming, taking a walk, that kind of thing.
So our brain's downtime mode.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is research shows this default mode is actually crucial for creative thinking. When we let our minds wander, those aha moments, those connections, they just pop up.
So we actually need to schedule an unscheduled time to let our minds do their thing.
Exactly. It's so easy to forget that in today's world. Always on, always going, never a break.
We forget how to just be.
And that's where those breakthroughs happen.
This is making me rethink my whole schedule. Maybe it's not about cramming every minute with doing stuff. We need to prioritize that downtime, let our brains wander.
It's not about being lazy. It's about letting your brain do its best work.
I'm convinced. Okay, one last thing. Gotta ask about this, people with ADHD. The book mentions some interesting connections there, right?
It is fascinating. For so long, ADHD was seen as something to be fixed. But really, it might be an evolutionary advantage, especially now.
How so? How does ADHD tie into elastic thinking?
People with ADHD, they might struggle with focusing on one thing, but they often excel at generating those new ideas, making connections others miss. Their brains are wired for possibility.
So it's not a roadblock, it's a different way of thinking, one that's actually ideal for this kind of world.
Exactly. And the traits that might be seen as weaknesses in one setting, they become incredible strengths in another. Imagine what we could achieve if we celebrated that neurodiversity instead of trying to fit everyone into the same box.
Love that. Celebrating those different ways of thinking. Now, back to dopamine for a sec. What's the connection there with ADHD and this whole elastic thinking thing?
Well, we know dopamine's key for motivation and reward, but in people with ADHD, that dopamine system, it often works a bit differently. Their brains might be less sensitive to it, so they need more to feel the same effect.
Which could be why they're often drawn to new experiences, always looking for that next dopamine hit.
Exactly. And while that can lead to challenges, it also fuels their creativity, their drive to explore. It's all about harnessing that energy effectively.
Finding those strategies that work for each individual.
And that's what Elastic is all about. We all have that capacity for elastic thinking. It's about finding what works best for you.
This whole conversation has been amazing. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Remember this, elastic thinking, it's not some special gift. It's a skill, a muscle. We can all develop it. And in a world that's changing faster than ever, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.
Couldn't agree more. To all our listeners out there, I highly recommend picking up Elastic. Embark on that journey into the power of your own adaptable mind. This is The Deep Dive, signing off. Until next time, stay curious.